On her wedding day, Sarah Matthews felt the weight of a dream come true. The ivory gown shimmered, her hair flowed in perfect waves, and the world seemed to stand still as she gazed at her reflection. But as she took one last look at herself, Max, her 13-year-old German Shepherd, did something that would shatter the fairy tale. He blocked her path, standing firm, his amber eyes filled with an intensity that wasn't there before. It wasn't just concern, it was a warning. As she knelt to him, a chilling realization struck. Everything she thought was perfect was about to unravel. Sarah Matthews stood before the full-length mirror in her childhood bedroom, feeling both nervous and exhilarated. Her wedding day had arrived, the culmination of 18 months of meticulous planning. The ivory gown hugged her figure perfectly, the lace shimmering under the morning light that streamed through the window, and her auburn hair cascaded in soft waves beneath a delicate veil. It should have been the happiest moment of her life, but something felt off. Max, her loyal German Shepherd, lay at her feet, watching her every move with those soulful amber eyes. At 13 years old, he had been her constant companion through it all. Her first heartbreak, the chaos of college finals, and the quiet moments when life seemed to stand still. He was more than just a dog. He was family. She had rescued him when he was just a scruffy 8-month-old pup from a shelter in their small Connecticut town. And over the years, he had rescued her back, offering comfort, companionship, and protection in ways that words could never express. "Well, what do you think, buddy?" Sarah asked, a soft smile tugging at her lips. But Max didn't respond with his usual excitement. Instead, he lay still, his gaze never leaving her, as though trying to tell her something she wasn't yet ready to hear. The wedding day had arrived, but despite all the excitement, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She had dreamed of this day for as long as she could remember, and now it was unfolding exactly as she had planned. The bridesmaids flitted around in pale blue dresses, the house buzzed with the energy of makeup artists and photographers, and her mother, Elizabeth, was orchestrating everything with her usual precision. It all felt perfect, until Sarah turned to Max once more. Max had always been by her side, through the highs and lows of life. Yet today he seemed off, as if something in him sensed that life was about to change forever. His usual enthusiasm had faded, replaced by a quiet stillness. Even though Sarah tried to dismiss it, deep down she knew something was wrong. Over the past few days, Max had been eating less, moving slower, and spending most of his time sleeping. His once vibrant spirit seemed dimmed, but with all the wedding preparations, Sarah hadn't had the chance to take him to the vet. She brushed off her concerns, telling herself it was just pre-wedding nerves. But as she stood before the mirror, her gaze falling on Max's tired face, a sinking feeling settled in her chest. Today wasn't just a celebration of her future, it was also a reminder of how fleeting life could be. If you're enjoying this story, leave a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit the like button. The moment Sarah stepped out of the car and into the warm September sun, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. The church was beautiful, the air crisp, and the photographer was ready to capture every detail. This was supposed to be the perfect day, the beginning of her new life with Michael. But then, as Sarah walked toward the garden for some pre-ceremony photos, something unexpected happened. Max, who had been quietly sitting beside her father in the car, stood up and moved toward her. He walked with slow, stiff movements, but there was an urgency in his step. Before anyone could react, Max planted himself directly in front of Sarah, blocking her path with his large, muscular frame. "Max, move, buddy," Sarah said gently, trying to guide him aside, her voice barely above a whisper. But Max didn't budge. He just stood there, his amber eyes locked onto hers. The photographer called out for Max to move, but he didn't respond, as if he were in another world, focused solely on Sarah. Her father approached, calling his name, but Max didn't acknowledge him. Sarah's heart began to race. It wasn't like Max to be so uncooperative. "Maybe he needs a walk," Jenny, her maid of honor, suggested, reaching for Max's leash. But the moment Jenny came closer, Max pressed his body against Sarah, leaning in as if he was trying to protect her from something. Sarah's hands shook as she knelt down in her wedding gown, her heart heavy with concern. There was something in Max's gaze that she couldn't ignore. This wasn't a typical doggy temper tantrum. Something was wrong, and it wasn't just Max trying to get attention. It was as if he was trying to stop her from walking away, like he knew she was heading towards something she might regret. As Sarah knelt beside Max, the weight of the moment settled heavily on her chest. His breathing was shallow, faster than usual, and his legs trembled under his own weight. He had always been her protector, her faithful companion, and now, more than ever, it seemed as though he was trying to warn her about something. His once vibrant energy had dimmed, replaced by a quiet urgency, a kind of sorrow she had never seen in him before. "Max, what's wrong, boy?" Sarah whispered, her voice catching in her throat. She gently stroked his fur, but the warmth she felt was wrong. Too warm, almost feverish. Her fingers trembled as she ran them along his side, feeling the rapid thump of his heart under his ribs. Max's eyes, usually so full of life, were now clouded with something Sarah couldn't quite place. It wasn't just worry, it was something deeper, something more profound. The realization hit her like a cold wave. She couldn't ignore it any longer. This wasn't just a case of pre-wedding jitters. Max was sick, and whatever was happening, it was more serious than she had wanted to admit. Her mind raced back over the past few days. Max hadn't been himself. He had barely eaten, moved slower than usual, and spent much more time lying down. Her heart sank as she understood now that his condition had been getting worse. She had been too wrapped up in the whirlwind of wedding plans to notice the signs, too focused on the future to pay attention to the present. Tears welled up in her eyes as she held Max close, whispering assurances that she would take care of him, no matter what. But deep down, Sarah knew the truth. This was no longer just about a wedding. It was about her loyalty to the one who had always been there for her, no matter what. As Sarah sat in the car with Max's head in her lap, her thoughts swirled in a storm of confusion and fear. The emergency trip to the veterinary clinic had taken priority, but there was something else gnawing at her. A dark shadow she couldn't ignore. Max's condition was worsening, but her mind kept drifting back to the conversation she had had with Jenny earlier that day. Jenny, her best friend and maid of honor, had always been a rock for Sarah. They had been inseparable since high school, but today, as Jenny had helped Sarah into her wedding dress, her expression had been unusually serious. "Sarah, I think you need to know something before you marry Michael," Jenny had said quietly, her voice filled with concern. "I didn't want to bring it up, but I can't stay silent anymore. I overheard something. There's talk about his business deals. There are rumors about him being involved in shady real estate transactions, exploiting vulnerable families. I'm not saying he's guilty, but there's a lot you don't know." The words had hit Sarah like a slap in the face. She had dismissed them at first, thinking Jenny was just being overly cautious, but now, as she stared out of the car window, she wondered if she had been naive. Michael had always seemed so perfect. His charm, his success, his love for her, they all seemed like pieces of a perfect puzzle. But now, there were cracks in that image she couldn't ignore. Was it possible that the man she was about to marry had a darker side? Had he been hiding secrets from her all along? The more she thought about it, the more the pieces of the puzzle seemed to fit together in a way that terrified her. The car ride to the veterinary clinic felt like it was taking forever. Max, still weak but holding on, lay quietly in Sarah's lap, his shallow breathing the only sound that broke the silence. As she absently stroked his fur, Sarah couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something was horribly wrong. Not just with Max, but with everything. Her thoughts kept returning to Jenny's warning, the words she'd spoken quietly earlier today. "You don't know him the way I do, Sarah. You need to be careful." Jenny's voice echoed in her mind, growing louder with every passing minute. Sarah had trusted Michael completely. He had been her rock, the one she had envisioned a future with, the man she was about to marry. But now doubts crept into her mind like a slow poison. What if Jenny was right? What if Michael wasn't the man she thought he was? As the car pulled into the clinic parking lot, Sarah glanced down at Max again. His amber eyes met hers, tired but full of unspoken understanding. It was as though he was trying to tell her something more than just his own suffering. She remembered the last few days, the way Michael had seemed unusually distracted, The way he had become defensive when certain topics, like his business dealings, came up in casual conversation. The truth, it seemed, was slipping through her fingers like sand. The man she was about to marry had hidden something from her. And now that veil of perfect love was starting to lift. Was her entire future with him a lie? Had Max known all along? As they entered the clinic, Sarah couldn't escape the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she hadn't prepared for. Support us by subscribing to our channel and sharing this video with your friends and family. Your support helps us continue bringing more stories like this. The examination room was sterile, silent, save for the low hum of machines and the rhythmic tapping of Sarah's fingers on her phone. Max lay on the cold metal table, his eyes closed, breathing labored. Dr. Peterson had taken him for tests, but the minutes seemed to stretch into hours. Sarah couldn't focus, her mind wandering back to the conversation with Jenny. The nagging doubt in the pit of her stomach had become a burning certainty. Suddenly, the door opened, and Dr. Peterson returned, his face grave. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She was barely able to focus on his words. Max's condition was dire, but it was the truth about Michael that now consumed her thoughts. Dr. Peterson sat down across from Sarah, gently taking her hand in his. "Sarah," he began carefully, "Max has a heart condition. It's in the early stages of heart failure. The stress of the day likely aggravated his condition. He doesn't have long, but we can start treatment now to make him more comfortable." The words hit Sarah hard, but she barely registered them. Her mind was reeling from a different shock. As Dr. Peterson continued explaining the treatment options, Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced down, and her blood ran cold. It was a message from Jenny. "Sarah, I didn't want to tell you this, but I think you need to know. I've found some disturbing things about Michael. His company is involved in fraudulent schemes, stealing from families who are already struggling. I don't think you can marry him without knowing the truth." Sarah's hands trembled as she read the message. The reality she had been avoiding all along was now undeniable. Michael was not the man he appeared to be. Everything she had believed about their life together, about the future, was built on lies. Her heart shattered, but amidst the pain, Max's steady presence reminded her of what truly mattered. Sarah's hands shook as she put down her phone, the message from Jenny still fresh in her mind. The room around her seemed to fade into a blur. Everything she had built her life upon was now crumbling. Max's heart failure was devastating, but the revelation about Michael, about the man she had loved and trusted, was the blow she hadn't prepared for. The guilt and confusion tangled within her, leaving her gasping for clarity. Max's soft whimper pulled Sarah back to reality. She looked down at her loyal companion, the dog who had been with her through every significant moment in her life. Max was never wrong. He had always been the intuitive one, the protector. And now, as he lay there, weak but still present, Sarah understood. Max had been trying to warn her all along, through his behavior, his refusal to let her move forward with the wedding. He had sensed the danger, and now, with the truth about Michael laid bare, Sarah knew she had a choice to make. Her mind raced, torn between her love for Michael and her unwavering loyalty to Max. She thought about the future she had imagined with Michael, the life they had planned, the home they were going to build together. But now, that future seemed tainted, a fantasy built on secrets and betrayal. Could she really marry a man who had hurt so many for his own gain? And if she didn't, would she be betraying the love she had shared with him? Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she looked at Max, who weakly lifted his head to nuzzle her hand. There was no decision left to make. Max had always been there for her, and now it was her turn to be there for him. Whatever happened next, she knew she couldn't continue down a path built on lies. The tension was unbearable as Sarah stood in the sterile clinic hallway, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Max, now resting comfortably with the medication Dr. Peterson had administered, was stable for the moment. But Sarah couldn't rest. She needed to confront the truth. Not only about Max's condition, but about everything else she had been blind to. The wedding she had spent so long planning, the life she had thought she would build with Michael. None of it felt real anymore. When Michael arrived, looking out of place in his tuxedo, his concern for her was palpable. His eyes scanned the room before landing on Sarah, and his face softened. Sarah, he said, walking quickly toward her. I'm so sorry. I was on my way to the church when I heard about Max. How is he? Sarah took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Her heart ached with the thought of everything they had shared, but she couldn't keep pretending. This wasn't just about a sick dog. This was about a betrayal so deep that it threatened to ruin everything she had believed in. Michael, she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow, I know what you've been hiding. Michael looked confused, his brow furrowed. What are you talking about? I don't know what you mean. No, you don't, Sarah shot back, her voice growing steadier as she found the strength to confront him. I know about your business, about the fraud, the way you've been exploiting people to build your wealth. You're not who you say you are, and I can't marry you, knowing what you've done. Michael's face drained of color as Sarah's words hit him with the force of a freight train. For the first time he looked truly vulnerable, guilt, shame, and fear written across his features. Sarah, I never meant for you to find out this way, he stammered, his voice faltering. Sarah stood there, her heart pounding in her chest as Michael's shocked expression collided with the raw truth she had just thrown at him. The silence between them grew unbearable, and for a moment Sarah couldn't look at him. Not as the man she was about to marry, not as the man she had thought she knew. All the years, the shared moments, the future she had imagined, all of it felt like a distant memory now. Michael's eyes darted around the room, his hands trembling slightly as he struggled to find words. Sarah, I didn't think it would come to this. It's not as bad as you think, he said, his voice unsteady. She shook her head, a wave of exhaustion sweeping over her. No, Michael, it's worse than I thought. You've been lying to me, and to so many people. You've hurt people who trusted you. The weight of the realization crushed her as the anger and betrayal bubbled to the surface. How could you do this? How could you keep this from me? After everything we've been through? After all the love you said we shared? Tears began to fall freely now. The dam of emotions she had been holding back finally breaking. She had wanted to believe in him, wanted to believe that the man she was going to marry was the same man she had fallen in love with. But now, all she could see was the stranger standing in front of her, the man whose choices had destroyed the trust between them. Max's soft whimper broke through Sarah's overwhelming grief. She looked down at him, his eyes still filled with that familiar, loyal love. Through the haze of her tears, she realized one thing. No matter what happened next, she had to choose the truth. She couldn't marry a man who had betrayed not only her, but the values she had once held dear. This character truly deserves a like, but sadly hasn't received it yet. Show some love for this story. Sarah's decision wasn't easy, but it was clear. As she looked at Michael, her heart shattered, but she knew there was no other path for her to follow. She had loved him, yes, but love wasn't enough when trust had been broken beyond repair. She couldn't marry a man whose actions betrayed everything she stood for, everything she had believed in. Michael, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the flood of emotions crashing over her, I can't marry you. Not after this. His face twisted in confusion and desperation. Sarah, please don't do this. I know I've made mistakes, but I love you. We can fix this. We can move past it. No, she replied, shaking her head. I've made a promise to myself, to always stand by what's right. I can't ignore the truth anymore. Her eyes were heavy with tears, but she didn't look away. She had to be strong for herself and for Max. Michael stood frozen, the reality of what was happening sinking in. He had lost her. And this time, there was no turning back. Sarah turned away, walking to where Max lay. As she knelt beside him, she felt a deep sense of relief. The road ahead was uncertain, but she knew she had made the right choice. Max's soft, steady presence beside her was all the reassurance she needed. The days that followed were a blur of emotions, and Sarah felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. Calling off the wedding had shattered her, but it also gave her a strange sense of freedom. She had done what she believed was right, even though it meant stepping away from the life she had planned. The more time passed, the clearer it became that she wasn't just leaving Michael, she was reclaiming her own integrity. But then, something unexpected happened. Michael, after some time apart, came to see Sarah at the clinic. He looked different, smaller somehow, stripped of the bravado and excuses he'd used to hide behind. With him was an apology so raw and sincere that it took Sarah by surprise. "I've been selfish," Michael said, his voice cracking. "I've hurt people, including you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I'm ashamed of what I did. I've lost the best thing that ever happened to me, and I deserve that." Sarah didn't know what to say. The anger she had felt had started to fade, replaced by a quiet sadness. Still, she nodded, grateful for the honesty he had finally given her. As he turned to leave, he paused. "I hope you find happiness, Sarah. You deserve it." His words were simple, but they gave her something she hadn't expected, a sense of closure, a gift of peace. If you want to support the team, please subscribe to our channel and share the video with your loved ones. Your genuine support means the world to us. The months that followed were both painful and enlightening. Sarah, though heartbroken, found solace in the quiet moments, time spent with Max, tending to his needs, cherishing their last days together. She had made peace with her decision, even though it meant walking away from the future she had imagined with Michael. Every day with Max felt precious, a reminder of what really mattered: loyalty, truth, and unconditional love. Max's condition worsened slowly, but Sarah never left his side. She canceled her plans, rearranged her life, all to make sure he was comfortable and cared for in his final months. She found herself reflecting more and more on the lessons Max had taught her. He had always been her protector, the one who had guided her through her darkest moments. But now, in his quiet, patient way, he was teaching her how to let go, how to embrace change, and how to move forward even in the face of loss. One evening, after Max had drifted off to sleep, Sarah sat by the window, gazing at the setting sun. She knew that Max wouldn't be with her much longer, but the love they shared would stay with her forever. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain: she had learned to trust herself, to choose what was right, and to honor those who truly deserved her love. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah found herself adapting to a life without Max, but his presence was never truly gone. She would catch herself reaching for him during moments of stillness, expecting him to be there, his comforting warmth beside her. The quiet pain of losing him was something she would carry for the rest of her life. But she knew that Max's legacy wasn't just in the memories. They were in the lessons he had taught her, the love he had shown her, and the way he had opened her heart to the world. One afternoon, Sarah stood in front of a shelter she had passed by many times before. It was the same shelter where she had adopted Max all those years ago. She remembered the day vividly, how he had looked at her with those soulful eyes, as if he had already chosen her. Now, after months of grief and healing, she felt ready to honor that moment by giving another dog the same chance. Inside, Sarah and her new partner Tom were greeted by the soft woofs and eager eyes of the shelter dogs. It wasn't the puppy she had expected, but rather an older, scruffy dog named Duke, his graying muzzle and gentle eyes reminding her of Max. "Are you sure about this?" Tom asked gently, as Sarah knelt down to pet Duke. "Absolutely," Sarah whispered. "Max taught me that love isn't about the time we have, it's about how we use it." Duke wagged his tail as if to say, "I'm ready." As Sarah sat by the window, watching Duke peacefully sleep in Max's old spot by the fireplace, a sense of quiet fulfillment settled over her. The journey she had gone through, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the loss, had all led her to this moment of understanding. Max had taught her more than she could have ever imagined about love, loyalty, and letting go. And now, with Duke by her side, Sarah had come to realize that life's most meaningful lessons often come wrapped in unexpected packages. It wasn't the grand wedding or the perfect plans that mattered, it was the love that endured, no matter what. In the years that followed, Sarah and Tom kept Max's memory alive in everything they did. They regularly volunteered at the shelter, bringing supplies and spending time with older dogs who, like Duke, deserved a second chance. On anniversaries, they would visit the small cemetery behind the shelter where Max was laid to rest, a place where they could reflect on the lessons he had taught them. They never stopped thinking of him. Max had been their guide, their protector, and their teacher. And every act of kindness, every loving gesture, was a tribute to the dog who had shown them what real love meant. Would you like to see part 2 of this story? Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment below with your thoughts and emotions. Share this video with your friends and family.